Alrighty. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining today. Definitely appreciate your time. We're going to get rolling now. So today what we're going to be talking about is the BIM 360 workflow, all the different BIM 360 tools. But before we get to that, just a little bit of a setup here. Just want to introduce Microdesk. So for those who aren't aware, Microdesk is an AECO industry consulting firm. We've been around since 1994. We currently have 11 locations nationwide, and we actually have our international office in the UK now. And one of the things that really sets us apart is our technical team. So we're very tech heavy as opposed to being sales heavy, and everybody in our group has actually come from the field. So myself, I've actually worked as an architect for about 10 years before I moved over here. And then we have structural engineers, mechanical, and the whole gambit. Now, in terms of Microdesk, we work with a lot of different partners. We're a platinum partner with Autodesk, as well as working with Bluebeam and IBM, KnowledgeSmart. So we work with all the main players to make sure that we offer the right support for our clients. Now, for today's presentation, the presenter is actually going to be myself. So my background, again, is as an architect, and I tend to focus more on the BIM, the cloud tools, and emerging and non-traditional technologies to get the most out of a workflow. So basically, let's get rolling. So for today, what we're going to be covering is BIM 360. And we're going to start off with just a general overview of what BIM 360 is, and then we're going to go into each of the different services and how they relate to each other, how they work, where things are going, and definitely QA. Now, if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out. We have the chat window and the question window. I'm going to be keeping an eye on those. If the question that comes in fits within the thing that I'm going over at that moment, I'll try to hit it at that point. If it doesn't, save it for the end, or I'll save it for the end and I'll cover it at that point. Now, before we get rolling, though, I actually have a question for everybody who's attending. So just a couple of quick polls for everybody, just to make sure I'm hitting things that are going to fit towards what you need. Okay. Perfect, thank you. So, okay. And then from there, how many people are actually utilizing BIM applications? So things like Revit or Navisworks or some of the BIM 360 tools. Alrighty. And for those of you who are saying no, don't worry, the BIM 360 workflow and tools don't need the BIM application to be taking advantage of. Then the last one here, and then we'll get rolling. Are you currently using cloud or mobile tools? Perfect. Thank you very much, everybody, for your information and time. Definitely appreciate that. So let's get rolling. So what is BIM 360? So BIM 360 is Autodesk's cloud suite of tools that are focused specifically on the design through construction workflow. So they're going to cover a lot of different bases. They're going to cover things like clash detection, working on quantification, doing field execution for safety, tracking work, commissioning, handover, and it's always a work in progress. One of the benefits of having a cloud suite of tools is that everybody's always working on the same version. You don't have the same problems that we run into on a desktop application. It's much easier to access it from anywhere and to share content. And part of the reason why we're focusing on this is that when you look at the sort of construction industry as a whole, there's over 220 million people working in that industry. But there's a lot of issues with regards to keeping track of things. You know, most projects tend to have a material waste of around 40%. Owners, and this information is coming from McGraw-Hill, so on 80% of projects, the owners are expecting some kind of added cost because of a problem, whether it's a problem from coordination, a problem from documents not being there, changes happening. And we're trying to find solutions that will help get everybody on the same page. And part of that is handling the software and the information. A lot of the tools now, they're great tools, but the problem is they tend to silo their information off. You know, this is working perfectly over here, but I need to get this information over there to this person. And then when I do that, how do I track which version they're looking at? Are they looking at the same version that I am? Are they working on the most recent content? Are they marking things up at the right point where everybody else can access it? So BIM 360 is one of the solutions that is really focused on solving that problem and making sure that it works not just for one person on the team, but for all the people on the team, regardless of where they might be situated within that within the project process. Now, part of this is going to be a process change. When we look at the way things have been done for a while, it's always been file-centric. You're working on a computer, you're opening up a program, then you send a file off to somebody, you email that or post that, and then you go back and forth with different updates and you try to remember which one's which. Things are moving more towards a project-centric workflow. And what I mean by that is that whether we're taking advantage of the cloud or more networking tools, we're making sure that everybody has access to a single point. You know, we're trying to make sure that there's version control so we can track what's happening. And there's more visibility and accountability in terms of who's doing what and who made what change. Now, in terms of tools available, there are a lot of them out there. And what we're going to be focusing on, again, are the BIM 360 tools within that workflow. And you notice here that each one kind of covers a different range of the project time frame. You've got team and docs that kind of start in the design frame and work further out into construction and then even into operations. You've got more of the coordination tools like glue and layout that are more into construction and focused there. You've got things like plan that are actually working for planning the construction, and field that goes into the commissioning, and building ops, which is solely a commissioning or operations tool. So each one kind of solves a specific problem. And we're going to start off with is BIM 360 team. And yes, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted to our YouTube page probably within a week. Alrighty, so for BIM 360 team, first question, what is BIM 360 team? So what it is basically a centralized workspace that's going to be focused more for our design teams. It's meant for collaboration, it's meant for sharing of information and working together. Also, for those who are actually working on a project that is taking advantage of collaboration for Revit, you will have access to team and you will be using team. Because whenever you save or synchronize your Revit model, it's saving it to BIM 360 team. That's where your central files are. Now, with that, you have a lot of different aspects that you can take advantage of. You have the ability to view your models in a regular browser. You don't have to have any plugins or anything. You can share your content. You can search and find information in there. And you can view either 2D or 3D views and get all your information out of that. And it's pretty easy. You look in here. You can see who your project team members are. You can invite people in. You can manage what user rights they have to a certain degree. You can see the different versions of each file there, who owns it, when it was last updated, and I can actually track the names and put in a wiki in there if I wanted to. Also a project calendar and discussions. So if you want everybody on the team to know exactly when our due dates are, when deliverables are set, when review periods are, I can have that in the calendar as part of my project. And then from there, if I need to coordinate, my model's online, I can do live 3D section cuts, I can have comments, and I can look at the different views within my Revit model, or CAD models as well. And just so you know, you can manage which views people can see. So it's not every single view in the project if you don't want that to be. So from there, I can do markups and comments online, make sure everybody works on that. If I want someone to be able to view the model, but I want to direct where they're viewing, I can do a live workflow. So essentially, I create a review session, send somebody a link, and I can guide them where I want. I can lock my camera to them, so that way I'm showing them what I want them to see. So that way it's not, no, go to the left. No, it's the one behind that. You don't have to worry about that. They're seeing exactly what I want them to. And when it comes to seeing what you need, probably one of the best features inside of Team is the version tracking. And I can see, okay, this is version 2, this is version 3. But one of the main things with different versions of files is, well, what changed between them? What you can do is say, I want to see this view of the model, and I want to see this version versus that version, and show me what changed. And that's automatic. It just does it. It looks at it and shows you based on color what's new, what's removed, and what's modified. And not just physically changed, but also inside the parameters. And then from there, I can filter that down by the discipline or the kind of modification and track that. And again, all of this is just online through a web browser. And in terms of the file formats, I'm kind of focusing on Revit with this. But the file formats that this works with are a lot. It's not just the Autodesk tools. I can view different file formats on there. I can track different file formats. And I can share and review them. And that's one of the big things. With Autodesk, all of their cloud viewing programs and services, they're working off sort of a shared technology. So when I talk about Team or Docs or Glue and the ability to view content, they're all going to have a similar foundation. And they can all view much more than just Revit or AutoCAD. And then from that, I'm focusing more so on the web browser. BIM 360 Team has access points from, again, the web browser, but also from both iOS as well as Android mobile devices. So regardless of who you have on your team or how they want to interact, they're going to be able to view the content on there. All right. So that was Team. What we're going to look at next is Docs. And just so everybody realizes, there's a lot of different tools here. There's a lot of different benefits to them. So I'm just going to be focusing on a few for each, just to make sure we have time and don't cover things too fast. So again, what's Docs? Well, where Team is more of a coordination tool for the designers, Docs is more of a coordination tool for the construction project team. So you're looking at a single repository for all of your 2D, 3D documentation, PDFs, Excel spreadsheets, whatever you want to put up there to share and manage with people, you can do that. You also have much more control in terms of access rights. So where the design team is expected, we're all working together, we're all working towards the same thing, and everybody's going to need to see everybody's model. Docs is understanding that, okay, certain people only need to see certain things or have specific rights. So you have more control there. And when it comes to uploading your content, within Team, yeah, you're uploading the whole model and I'm viewing it in 3D. And when I track versions in Team, it's the version of the file. But when we get to construction, I don't necessarily need to know if the model changed. I need to know if specific views have changed. So when I'm uploading this, I can upload my Revit model, my DWG, or a PDF, and it's actually going to be pulling out the individual sheets or the views. So within that, I can then track the different versions of each individual sheet in an AutoCAD file or a Revit file or individual files for a PDF. So maybe the only thing I changed was the cover sheet, or I only changed the floor plans and a section, but my schedules are all the same. So I can actually see when that specific view was changed when I upload it. And in terms of uploading things like a Revit sheet or Revit DWG, those sheets are going to have data, they're parameters, they're intelligent, and I can pull them out. When I upload a PDF, Docs can actually use OCR technology. Essentially, it's called Object Character Recognition, where I draw a box around an area on my title block, and it reads the information in there. So it automatically can pull the different sheets from that PDF out and number them and name them accordingly. So I don't have to do any extra work. As long as my title blocks are consistent, I'm good. From there, again, I've got my different methods of inviting and managing people. If I want to invite somebody to my project, I can either give out rights based on individual people. I can say everybody from this company has the same level of rights, or I can say that everybody from a specific role has a certain right. So the architects can go here, the superintendent can access all of these, the designers can only see a few things here. So you can manage it however it works best for you, so that way everybody is actually seeing and doing what you need them to do. Again, I can track my different versions, and I can actually run a slider back and forth so I can see what changed visually from one view to from one version to the next. And I can also tell it to color code different versions, so I can graphically see it that way. Okay. Just like Team, I'm still able to see the properties inside the elements because it's able to read all these different file formats. It still understands what elements are. I can still get that data out. And when I'm working with that, I can see if there's any issues. I can see over here that there's a blue bar around my numbers, meaning I can click on that as a hyperlink, and it automatically will take me to that other view. So I can be looking at the sheet with my floor plan, pop over to my sections. I can see if there's any issues that are placed here, and they're color-coded based on their status. And I can also place my markups on my sheets too. And all the information here, again, is going to be visible on other mobile devices as well. And if I need to, one of the newer features has actually been the ability to create an RFI workflow. So rather than just putting up an issue or asking a question, I can actually say that, okay, when I upload this, it's going to go to this person, it's going to follow this route, and I can actually start to create things that will manage the process for me, or at least streamline it a little bit. And from there, Again, mobile access, you're going to have both the iOS as well as Android, so I can reach my information, coordinate with my team, and see what needs to be done, and work with everybody from anywhere. And the goal here is, again, I want to make sure that whoever's out in the field is always in sync with the crew back in the office. We're trying to get away from having siloed data, whether it's siloed by the file type or it's siloed by your location. We're moving away from that, so that way everybody can really coordinate fully with everybody else. So again, BIM 360 docs, that's more on the construction side of things as opposed to design. It overlaps with BIM 360 team, and at the moment they don't work, they don't automatically send content back and forth, but that's in one of the roadmaps for that. I'll talk more about the roadmaps at the end. So BIM 360 Glue. So we talked about the tools that allow me to upload and share content back and forth. Now, Glue is much more specific. It's a cloud-based collaboration platform. It's focused specifically on 3D geometry, whereas Docs and Team both could view 2D or 3D. But the focus on this one is more on conflict resolution. So like anything else, there's a lot of different abilities within the tool, but the main one that most people tend to take advantage of is the clash detection in the cloud. So if I have multiple models up there, I'm looking at my HVAC, I'm looking at my structure, and I want everybody on the team to have a single place that they can upload their content, and then I can actually create my clash detection on that. Perfect. That allows me to say, okay, well, based on the most recent content, where are we? What's hitting what? How are we working on things? Show me all of the active clashes. Let me turn off the ones that are closed or resolved. And then from there, I can actually create markups and say, okay, well, here's a clash, and I can direct somebody on how I want them to solve or alleviate that. And the nice thing is, because this is cloud-based, I can open up the models that I've been uploading inside of Revit or AutoCAD and say, show me what clashes there are. So from the authoring tools, I can actually see where things are and make the changes there and then re-upload it. And if there's something I need to do that requires maybe more features or more power than Glue has, I can open up my Glue content directly into Navisworks. So I can activate the information there, pull it down, and do more work there. And if there's certain views that I need to create, I can do them inside of Navis and push them out so that everybody else on the team can see them. So even though we're focusing a lot on just the cloud technology, this stuff does actually work with our desktop tools. It has to. Now, Glue, I'm talking pretty quickly. I'm only looking at the clash tool on that. But Glue actually does connect to a lot of the other services. So one of the things I can do with all the geometry that I'm looking at here is I can create something called an equipment set. I want to focus on that in a minute or two. But more importantly, what this allows me to do is take the 3D geometry and send that out to the field for a tool called BIM 360 Layout. Now, Layout, or APL, depending on how you're looking at it, is a tool that helps you manage your locations, both from the site and the design side of things. So you're going to be much more coordinated in terms of what your design intent is and the as-built. It's going to help you improve your QA/QC because things are going to be exactly where they're supposed to be. And if there are changes, you can go back and forth and see if that change is actually going to impact your workflow. So if you're trying to make sure that all your penetrations are in the right location, your connectors, your sleeves, all of that has to be in the right spot, this is how you can actually do that. So a couple of different workflows. Simple one is you're coordinating your design. So you create points within your authoring tool, AutoCAD or Revit, for example, and say, okay, this is where things need to be tracked. From there, I can send that information out to the field, whether it's CSV, DXF, somebody out in the field uses that, and they use that to lay out where those points are, so that way your design actually is followed in the field. Now another option, let's say we're going in the other way. Somebody out in the field is actually using the laser tools to actually collect the locations. And they're going to send that from that tool into the authoring tools, or even into the review tools like Navisworks. So that way I can check and say, okay, well, these are the points that they collected out there. Are they okay? Are they in the right spot? But most of the time what's going to end up happening is when we take advantage of the whole BIM 360 workflow. So you're in one of the tools, whether it's Revit, AutoCAD, or Navisworks. I've got my points in there, and those points get sent up to Glue, which connects directly to the BIM 360 Layout app, which can then connect directly to the TopCon or other robots in the field and manage and maintain that. So perfect. We send it out to the field, we track, we shoot the points, and then if there's changes, that sends it right back to Glue, which can then send it back to our tools. And if I want to, I can then create an analysis inside of our tools to find out, okay, well, where are we off? You know, is my floor actually flat? What's the percentage of being off? Am I going to run into problems because they shifted things in the field? And let's say that they actually do shift something in the field. I can then create something called an issue in BIM 360 field directly from this. So we're out in the field, we do this, we come back, we realize that something doesn't line up. That can automatically send that data and tie to BIM 360 field, so that way I now know, okay, there's a problem here and we have to deal with this. So we need to alleviate that. So for point layout, typically what we're focusing on with this is the ability to connect field personnel, again, with the design teams. We're making sure that all the data is being shared back and forth and that the intent of the model, the locations of that model, are actually placed where they need to be. And the really cool thing about this one is it is a nice tool, but a lot of people don't actually realize they have this. Because if you've already bought Glue, you probably already have layout. Okay, so we talked about our main tools where we can store our content and share it and do our reviews. We talked about Glue where I can actually do clash detection and model review. And then I talked about how Glue can connect to point layout so I can actually track our locations of elements and how if there's a problem there, that can actually tie into something called BIM 360 Field. Now, BIM 360 Field is a tool for project management and coordination. So again, cloud, web-based. You can manage the roles and give people specific access, and it is secure. And one of the features that more people are starting to become aware about from this is in the commissioning side of things. So typically at the end of a project, an owner is given binders, USB drives, and a bunch of content that hopefully someone will ever go through and organize and try to make sense of. But what this allows me to do, and we'll cover this in a little bit more detail, is take all that information that is tracked and collected and actually connect it intelligently to objects. So rather than trying to go through binder after binder or figure out which USB drive had that information on 6 months ago when the project finished, I can just look on the model and find it there. But starting from scratch, when we first look at field, we're going to have our project overview. This is going to give me some different graphs based on my preferences and my role. So that way I can essentially see the state of the project as well as the state of maybe my responsibilities. If I want to, I can track what the status of the project is from a day-to-day basis, how many people were on site, what happened, the weather conditions, things like that. And then I can actually track things like issues. Now, one of the things with issues is that this is not a good thing or a bad thing. An issue is just something that I want to track, something I want to categorize. I could be saying, okay, these are things that are good, perfect. You know, everybody was compliant today. They all wore their hard hats, or this was done the right way, or I'm actually tracking things that are wrong. Just depends on the project and what my role is and how I'm trying to organize things. And from within this, I can organize it and sort it however I need. From there, I can look at things like my equipment. And the equipment here, I can pull in from either an Excel spreadsheet, I can put it in manually, or I can pull it in directly from my Revit model. So if I actually have something that has gone into Glue, I can send that from Glue. Actually, it doesn't need to be Revit, as long as it's in Glue. I can pull it from there into Field. What that means is that I don't have to put in all those one at a time. What it also means is after I've added more data to this, I can push it back to my model. Again, that ties into the commissioning side. But what I'm looking at here is mostly web browser access. And the people in the field, they're not going to have that. Most of the people in the field are going to be using a tablet. So when I'm looking at that, the interface is going to be much more simplistic, much more user-friendly. When I look at this, first thing I need to do is, okay, well, today is Tuesday. What do I actually have to do? Let me look at my tasks. What is in front of me? What do I have to take care of today? So from there, let me walk the site and see what my issues are. So I found something that's wrong. I created a new issue. Let me find where I am on the model or on the PDF that's been uploaded. I can put a push pin in there and see where that is. And if this is a project where, you know, we had an idea of what might happen or we've seen this happen a couple of times, I can actually create templates. So as I go through, I can say, okay, well, On the drywall, these are the typical things that we might have a problem with. You know, there was a hole, or somebody drew on it, or the screw head just sticking too far out. I pick which one that is, and I don't have to type in a whole bunch of stuff. It's basically preset. Okay, so new issue. Where am I? Push pin here. What kind of an issue is it? This one. Maybe put in a little bit extra information, or I can add a photo to it. Now, if I'm just walking the site and I'm tracking issues, that's one thing. But a lot of the times, especially when we're talking about drywall, I might just need to fill out a checklist. So let's say I'm doing a punch list. I'm walking the site. I'm reviewing safety. I'm doing anything. And I can say, okay, well, where's my list? Perfect. So here's my list. It's all coordinated. It's all consistent. So I can go through and actually say yes, no, positive, negative, true, false. I can modify what the results are going to be. And in some cases, I can say that if I put in a negative answer, essentially a no, it can auto-generate one of those issues. So from that point, I say no. I now have an issue created, and then I can fill that out. And I mentioned before, what happens if I want to add a photograph? Okay, well, in that case, I want to attach a photo. I can mark that photo up so I can give it a little bit more information and really direct somebody to see what it is I want them to see. And if I want to be very, official about this, I can then actually sign off on my checklist and say, yes, this is complete. I approve of this, or this is me saying that it's all taken care of, my responsibility. So I can track all that kind of information inside of here. And then from there, if I need to, I can actually look at more than just that 2D PDF. I can look at the 3D geometry that can get sent in from things like Navisworks or Glue. I can click on it, and that can actually show me the data or the information inside of that piece of equipment. And the equipment I'm looking at here is actually like a physical piece of equipment that you might consider for a building. It's a pump. But in terms of equipment, just like an issue is not necessarily a bad thing, a piece of equipment is any object or thing that I want to track. It could be exit signs. It could be door hardware. It could be anything. Many people tend to see it as specifically the things that I need to track for commissioning or I want to add more data to. But this is typically what I'm going to be seeing. And then from there, we've put all this information in. So now what? Now I can actually track that information. There is a large assortment of templates for reports. So am I looking at my issues? Am I looking at my checklists? What do I want to see? Do I want to actually see the graphics that I've put in there, like that markup or the photo? And I can create that report, and I can export that out. And the reports that I ask for can come out in a couple of different formats. So whether I'm looking for PDF or Excel, and if it's something that I typically would be asking for on a regular basis, one of the things that I can do is say, I want this report to be sent out on a regular basis. Every Monday morning, I want this report to run, and I want you to email it to me and 3 other people. So I can actually create those kinds of repetitive tasks online so I don't have to go out looking for the information. That information gets automatically sent to me. And with regards to getting that information sent to me, the information that I put inside of these cloud tools, they're not locked there. Again, in some cases, maybe I want to take this and send this elsewhere. So if I look at this, I can take all my issues, and I can export those all out to Excel. So maybe at the end of the project, I want to have a record of all of my issues just so I can review them or archive them elsewhere. If I have all of my equipment, maybe I want to export those out to an Excel spreadsheet too. So I can pull that information out in a couple of different ways, whether it's taking it from field and pushing it back into something like AutoCAD, Revit, or Navisworks, sending it out to Building Ops, which I'll get to in a bit, or sending it out just to a simple Excel spreadsheet. So I can actually pull that out of there. It's not locked inside of these tools. So for BIM 360 Field, we're talking more about a tool that is used for coordinating, managing different tasks, tracking workflows and tasks, and making sure that all that information can be used for insight. You can do reporting on it. You can track and see who's doing what. I can see if there's any one specific company that tends to have issues doing certain things. Like I'm always running into a problem. This person is always behind with regard to these aspects. So it allows me to start to make more intelligent decisions. And in many cases, that's the exact same setup for a tool called BIM 360 Plan. Now, BIM 360 Plan is basically a planning tool. And when we talk about planning, we're looking at something that's typically more of a pull plan. So in a lot of cases like that image on the previous slide where you have people looking at the wall with a lot of sticky notes, that's where a lot of people are working with. They're very easy to work with. You write the name of the task A lot of the times, each person on the project is going to have a specific color, so it's easy to track that, and you move things around manually. Other options are more of a spreadsheet. You can track who's doing what. You have the different colors, times. Is it happening? Is it not happening? The problems with these is that the sticky notes, either you're taking a photograph of that or somebody then has to manually take that information on the wall and put that on the computer. And then it's hard to track. It's not exactly the most accessible thing in the world. And on the spreadsheets, usually those aren't shared. Where BIM 360 Plan comes in is it has the user friendliness and the color coding of the sticky note workflow with the intelligence of a spreadsheet, but also the ability to actually get that data out and do something with it. If I start to make changes in there, again, it's online. Anybody else who maybe couldn't make it to the meeting or is out in the field, they're going to see those changes. They can track that. You can do performance metrics to make sure that you're being held accountable and that your project is on time. And essentially the goal here is to try to get around those productivity issues. So some of the things that we talked about in the very beginning from McGraw-Hill, same kind of an issue here. So on a lot of the times on their projects, based on the Construction Industry Institute, there's things where people are moving things around because they weren't scheduled appropriately, or things didn't happen when they needed to. There was a roadblock here that wasn't dealt with, or a handoff that was missed because somebody was late or this wasn't informed on time. So when we look at these things, what we're trying to do is make things a lot easier. And within the workflow here, we can set things up. We have each individual company, each individual person. We can track locations on the site, different work breakdowns. We can look at it in more of a swim lane, so I can see, okay, well, what work is happening in what location on the site? And I can tell just by the graphic what things are approved, what things are locked down and agreed upon, and what things are still in flux. And if what I need to do is find out, okay, well, how do these things tie together? What leads into the next? I can actually look at the different pieces in a swim lane and determine, okay, well, what are my roadblocks? You know, what kind of task is this? Is this a milestone? Is this the delivery? You know, what has to happen before this? What has to happen afterwards? And I can track all this information in here very easily. And again, what I'm focusing on at the moment is sort of a web browser interface. But just like the other tools, I can still access all of this from a mobile device. I can click on things, move things around, input the data, and tell people where I am with the process. I can say that this is still open, or you know what, this is good, I can commit to this. This is finished, or this is incomplete, which will then automatically set me up for, okay, well, when can you do this? So it can create a new task. And the reason why it wants to create a new one as opposed to editing the old is because I need to report on things. I need to find out what's going on with the process. Where are we with the PPC? How are we running? And then I can dial in a little bit deeper on some of these graphics to get more information based on different people in the project and where we are in terms of a time frame. Again, one of the common threads through all of these tools is the ability to track my information, to see where I am. You know, uploading information is nice, but if I can't report on it, if I can't take advantage of that to act on it or to get more intelligent decisions going forward, be proactive as things move on, they're not as useful as they could be. And that's where a lot of this is going for. So for BIM 360 Plan, we're looking to make sure that everybody can access anything, anywhere, and that we can analyze that data moving forward. Excuse me. Now, for one of the last ones here called Building Ops. Now, of the different BIM 360 services, this is probably the least known of them. And what BIM 360 Building Ops is it's a mobile-first tool for building management. So typically what's going to happen is at the end of construction, the CM will submit to the owner, here's all the information, all the commissioning, and then the owner takes it from there and decides how they want to maintain or manage things. Now, what this does is I can actually pull that data from BIM 360 field, or I can upload it otherwise, and I can actually maintain that. It makes it easier for my personnel out in the field. So again, we have all this data that we've accrued through the construction process. It does me no good after construction is done to leave it there. So I say that I want to export that to Building Ops, and now I have that there. Same information, same photos, same documents, same PDFs, all the cut sheets. If they were up there already, now I can take advantage of them in the actual maintenance process. So if I have a building occupant, what they can do is actually log in either on a mobile device or on a website and say, okay, well, I'm in my space, not working. There's no power, it's too hot, it's too cold, something's going on. They can create a ticket. And as that ticket goes through, they can put in what information they need, take care of everything, add photos, and then from that, you now have a ticket system. Again, all part of this one little service. So the person who goes out there based on their user type, if I'm actually the maintenance person, I'll see this. Now I can actually go through and see the priority, see where it is. I can open up all the information related to that object. I can see if it's a part of a 3D model. If there were PDFs in there in terms of instructions or tracking, I can see that. So it enables your maintenance personnel to, number one, have a lot more data at their fingertips to be able to view the building's information from anywhere. And it also enables the building's occupants to be able to much more easily put in tickets for anything. Something's not working. They can track this, they can track that. And from a building owner, again, there's that big tracking aspect. I can see the tickets. From a owner or a manager, I can start to see, okay, well, you know what? We've been getting a lot of issues related to HVAC over the last 2 months. Maybe that means that something's wrong with the HVAC and all we're doing is putting Band-Aids on something that we really need to address before too long. So I can actually start to look at those kind of things. I can see how long certain technicians take to actually follow up on something. So again, all this information, all this data that we're working with, it's something that I can understand, I can see in one location, and then I can actually act on. So from a handover experience, you're giving something to an owner that is easy to work with. It doesn't require and doesn't need a crazy thing like Maximo or other really in-depth and powerful building maintenance or management tools, because it's meant to be very simplistic and very user-friendly. So in some cases, you might want to look at this from a starting point of, I want to get into BIM for managing and maintaining tools. And one of the other things here is, if you are tying it to other tools like panoramic power, that allows me to start to see, what's my energy use? I can tie that to the building as well and track that in time and see how things are working. Now, those are the main tools here, but like anything else, the tool's not always going to be used as is. So one of the things that Autodesk has been doing is allowing the integration of additional apps or plugins. So if you have a team on site that knows how to program, or you really like the idea of BIM 360, but you know what, it just needs to do this, and then I would jump in. There's a good chance that that's possible now. So BIM 360 has the ability to work with different services to sync with. You can take that model viewer and actually put it into other things. One of the tools that we've built internally ties things into Maximo, and we're using some of the model viewers to actually bring our model from the cloud into that. You want to make a custom BIM hub. Perfect, not a problem. That's actually something that a company, J.E. Dunn, did. They created their own internal dashboard and connected their data to external databases. So there were certain things that they wanted to do, from costing, from tracking, and they made it work for how they needed. And while this plugin setup allows you to customize and extend the tool's abilities as is, there's also where Autodesk is looking to go with things. So up until 2010, most things on the cloud were pretty basic. It's more of an FTP site. The last few years, they've really been focusing on that and connecting things, making it much more internal. Autodesk has purchased several companies and invested in them. They've also grown some things homegrown in terms of building services and set up around like docs. Things are going much more project-centric using the Forge APIs for customization. They're making things much more cloud-heavy and cloud-savvy. So that way it's not just taking a desktop tool and throwing it up online and hoping everything works out. It's very designed for that. So that way when you're working on a mobile device, it has the exact same features and look as you're going to have on the website. It's not going to be sort of a limited or light version of that. So that's where things are going. And in terms of being able to track that, Autodesk has actually been very forthcoming with a lot of information lately. If you look at the forums for some of the tools, they've actually been starting to post information about the roadmap. So again, because it's a cloud-based tool, they want feedback. They're much more active in terms of and able to address that feedback more often. And they're not worried, they're there isn't the same issue in terms of versioning that we tend to see from a desktop standpoint. They push out that update, it goes live, and everybody now has access to new features, things that they've been asking about for a while typically. And in addition to that, one of the things that is going to be part of the BIM 360 tools, again, pulling everything together. And Autodesk has talked a little bit about there's a question for generative design on our next webinar, but this is kind of part of that. Project Quantum is where they see the future of a lot of their services. And part of that is based off of the BIM 360 idea of everything connected. We're working off of a similar data source. We're not siloed. We're able to share information back and forth between our different teams and really work well and coordinate as a full single team, as opposed to having different people in different areas that don't talk to each other. That's really where things are going from the standpoint of BIM 360. There's going to be a lot of updates this year. Don't have an actual timeline or time frame on when that's going to hit, but Autodesk is focused very heavily on creating this single workflow and source where all these tools work happily together, and it makes it a lot easier for people to coordinate. So, what did we cover today? We talked a little bit about what BIM 360 is, in terms of it's a cloud-based, it's a cloud-based service that has multiple aspects that we can tie together and work with. We talked a little bit about the different aspects of that service, how you've got team and docs depending on what your role is or what the time frame on the project is, and then how we can start to do very specific tasks with plan, field, or glue, and a little bit on where things are going in the future and how you can track that from their forums. But definitely a great series of tools. This overview, and that's exactly the way to look at it, is an overview, covers some of the major functions of them, but each tool has a lot of nuance and some things that we don't have the time here to really focus on. But if you do have questions, shoot them over now, or I can touch on them later. So some of the ones that I've been asked already is, are we recording this? Yes, we are actually going to record this. And it will be posted on our YouTube page probably within the week. Another one is, does BIM 360 Docs and Team come with Revit subscription? As it is right now, it doesn't come with the typical subscription. So if you are purchasing the building design suites or on the collections, it doesn't come with that. However, if you're buying collaboration for Revit, that does come with Team. And there are, I believe, a couple of promotions going on right now where you can get seats of Team, possibly Docs, with the Revit or collections. So if you have any questions, definitely reach out to our sales team. They can help you out with that, because the different promotions change on a regular basis. Okay. The ballpark cost of BIM 360 services. So that's actually kind of a, I don't want to say strange question, but it's a strange answer. So the cost of those services is going to vary based on the service. So Team is per user. So everybody who's going to be accessing the Team service will need an entitlement. And depending on how many people you're going to be adding to that, it's a different price point. So if you're buying between 1 to 25, you're buying it at a single user. Once you get to the 16 people, though, it's cheaper to buy it in packages of 25. The price goes down from, I believe, 10 per person to about 8. And then once you hit, I believe it's 100 people, then it drops down to $4 per person. So it does vary. When we start looking at things like Docs, Glue, and Field, same idea, but different price point. So Glue and Field tend to be more expensive, and for that, it just depends on how many people you're going to need to give access to that. Again, if you're sorry, if you have any specific questions in terms of how much it's going to cost per person, just reach out to our sales team and they can get that to you. Any other questions inside of the question or chat window? I'll keep my eye on that, but while I wait for that, just want to let you know about some upcoming webinars. One of the questions actually was asking about that one. The next one we have is on the 11th of April. That's going to be generative and analytical design. So that one slide I showed with sort of Project Quantum where you can connect things, we're going to be talking a little bit about where we are with that right now. So if you've heard of Dynamo, but you want to hear where that's going, maybe you have heard of Fractal and you want to see how that actually can apply to you, whether you're architectural, construction, mechanical, or PM, we'll talk about that. And we'll have more webinars in the coming months as well. So this is the next scheduled one. From there, just to let everybody know, Microdesk, we do have for many services, whether it's from creating models, helping out with the coordination, whether it's working with the scan to BIM or the facility management, kind of what we talked a little bit with the usage of BIM 360, outside of our regular training and consulting. And if anybody has any questions, they realize, oh, I meant to ask about this, or I meant to look at that, feel free to reach out to us, take a look at our YouTube page, that's where this will be posted, and we'll be happy to help you out and go over things. So thank you very much for everybody's time. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.